Dr. Donald Kaberuka. You are also at the forefront of the African transformation journey, former African Development Bank president and current partner of Southbridge Group. And I know you have some experience here too. Can you share with us some of your experience at the AU, for example? Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, as one of the two Rwandans on this panel, let me say how grateful we are to our colleagues from other African countries and how privileged we are to learn from you. We have here two of Africa's most distinguished economists, Celestin and Carlos. So we're very thankful to you, sir. Same as my brother here. And also to many other guests who have joined us. We are really grateful that you came. We can learn from you. So maybe I should say as little as I can so we can learn as well from these people. But let me just share a couple of thoughts. When Africa became independent, or began the journey of independence, it was only about 32 countries. A large part of Southern Africa was still not free. Many Portuguese colonies are not free. And so the 32 countries got together and they formed something called the Organization of African Unity. It was an attempt to have the agency, which Carlos refers to, entered 3 missions. Mission number 1, don't touch the borders. Because if we begin to redraw the borders which colonialists have left us, it will be a big problem. And, of course, since then, in Sudan and Ethiopia, there have been some issues there, but that principle has been adhered to. We kept the borders. We don't like them. They have caused a lot of confusion, but that was the idea. Number 2, liberated the rest of the continent. And that was a mission which Africa completed in 1994, with South Africa getting independence. Now, the third mission is where we have a problem, and this is Carlos's problem. Because as leaders said, look, let's keep the borders. They also said, let us integrate our economies. That journey has been very, very difficult. Later I can explain why I think it has been very difficult. And as a result, again to Carlos and Celestin's point, Africa has accepted almost implicitly a form of junior partnership in international affairs. It is that junior partnership which we have to deal with. Let me just give an example. Because Carlos mentioned partnership, and we have many friends here from European countries. Some years back, I was involved in an exercise of negotiation with the European countries. And when you talk to our friends from Europe, our closest neighbors, talking about Africa, they will talk about 3 things. We need to deal with migration. We need to deal with China. We need to deal with Islamic radicalism. I said, but wait a minute. We're not here to talk about Africa's problems only. We're here to talk about Africa's problems, also European problems. Unless you don't have problems. And the person I was talking to happened to be an Italian. I had to remind him, I still have my numbers here, that up to 1980, 30 million Italians migrated out of Italy. 62% of Argentinians are of Italian origin. 2.3 million Italians live in New York. So what is so new? You have problems, we have problems, let's discuss them together. But for some reasons, Carlos says, each time we have to deal with this, whether it is climate, whether it is migration, what it is, we accepted some degree of a junior partnership. And that we have to deal with, especially the young generation. Now, the reason I'm saying this is that the way to end this partnership is to have a strategy. And I'll explain. Countries like ourselves, especially in the last 3 years where there have been mayhem, chaos in the global economy, you need a strategy. And here's what I mean. You don't need a strategy in the short term. You need a strategy in the long term. Chinese plan strategies for 50 years. You need a strategy not because a strategy to succeed is a good thing you need, but it is existential. You need to have that strategy. And I will have time later maybe to articulate what I think that strategy should contain. But I want to say that in the last 3 years, for reasons my colleagues mentioned, our vulnerability have been exposed. You know, you have had a crisis which maybe is best described as a synchronized crisis. Pandemics, economics, terrorism, geopolitics, all in one at the same time. And those of us who used to believe that international cooperation is available for us to resolve these issues found that actually that international cooperation is at its lowest when we need it most. I don't know, I'll tell you the story of vaccines. My president is here, he can tell you the story of vaccines. But that was a symbol of actually what is wrong with our expectations of what you call international cooperation. We are told, don't worry, vaccines will be there, they'll be shared. At the last moment, there are no vaccines. Because every country was looking after itself. Now, our friends in the global north are distracted by what? They need to increase defense spending because of what they're having. They need to have energy independence. They need to deal with issues in Eastern Europe. I don't think their attention is focused on Africa at the moment. And for that reason, this issue of our junior partnership in that international system is now an existential issue which we have to deal with. I can explain later what I think that should be, but also I want to end by saying this. We have not seen in the global economic sphere the degree of uncertainty like we're living with now. No one knows what will happen tomorrow. Look, I have two distinguished economists here. If I ask them, would they have guessed that Credit Suisse would have collapsed? That an American bank in the Silicon Valley would have collapsed? No. Which other virus is coming to hit us? No one knows. Would anyone have thought there would be war in Eastern Europe, almost on the scheme of World War I? And so, when you combine this, our junior partnership, which we have to deal with, uncertainty in the world, limited international cooperation, we have to do something different. And later I'll articulate what I think we can do. And one thing I think Rwanda has demonstrated, look, we still have many problems. But I think Rwanda has demonstrated what I call a series of inversions. Let me explain what I mean by that. So Rwanda is a small country, 26,000 square kilometers. We are now over 13 million people. Now, we have a complicated history. Our geography is very difficult. I don't have to say this here. We are 2,000 kilometers from the sea. We don't have natural resources. So that is all the things packed against us. So what I think Rwanda has demonstrated, you can have a series of invasions. Our history is very bad, therefore we have to do X, Y, Z. Our geography is complicated, therefore we have to do something. Our lack of natural resources, maybe we have, or maybe we'll find one day. Therefore we have to do something. And thinking like how you turn a problem into a potential solution is how you address all these issues. I don't believe for a while that even those countries who have factors which are maybe more favorable than ourselves have a luxury of not thinking invasions, i.e., here's a problem, how do I deal with it? So take the question of population. So I was looking at the statistics of the census which just came out. Please, I urge everybody here, especially our Rwandan compatriots, to take a look at the census. It has incredible information. Not simply how many we are. It tells you about access to digital. I think 62% people have mobile phones. I looked at access to internet, rate of urbanization, the structure of the population, and that tells you what you have to do, which Carlos was referring to. I think if we think like that, in all African countries together, we can find a solution. Of course, we have the African institutions, which is another story. I will come to it. I don't think there is a lost case, but there's work to do there.